At this time, we'll have the introduction of the delegation members. We'll start from, I guess, my left with Representative Keith Perry.
Representative Keith Perry, District 22.
Representative Chuck Chestnut, District 23.
I'm Senator Steve Ulrich, District 14, North Central Florida.
Representative Leonard, Bembry, District 10.
And Representative Porter is here. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you. I am Elizabeth Porter, representative for District 11.
Thank you. Well, good morning. This bill was proposed by a constituent group. We are bound by the duty to hear this bill or this before this committee. There will be a strict 3-minute limit for speakers. That will be done by a timer. The meeting will also be videoed. The delegation will have the ability to amend the bill at the end as it is drafted now. I guess the bill will create a 30-member commission. It will study and develop the proposed unification plan for Gainesville Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. It will require a referendum to be put forth to the people if the unification plan is approved by the legislature. It would require a referendum to be approved by a majority of the electorate in both Alachua County and the city of Gainesville. Just to note that the amendments I think that should occur is that in the bill it speaks of a January 15th, 2012. The legislative session for 2012 will start January 10th, 2012, and it will end March 9th, 2012. So some language in the bill should be amended to probably December 10th, 2012. So those are some of the things, and that's why we stated earlier that it will be amended at the end, just to be sure. And the reason that the legislative session will start in January is because of reapportionment and redistricting. So that's why the legislature normally starts in January after reapportionment. So just for those. We will start with the City of Gainesville, Mayor Craig Lowe.
Good morning, Senator and Representatives. Welcome to the Thomas Center. Hope you enjoy your stay here. But as I told some others, I hope that some people don't take too much of a liking to it, or they'll want this building too. Public safety is one of the fundamental activities of a municipality, and it's crucial for a city the size of Gainesville to have its own police department so that we can carry out public safety in a manner that is consistent with our own community's values. And the values of Gainesville could be quite different than those in the rural areas of Alachua County, and the current situation allows for public safety to be carried out in a manner that is consistent with both. And to eliminate the Gainesville Police Department, or to abolish it, is a fundamental violation of the concept of home rule. Any discussion of this should be done through the channels that exist under the charter of the city of Gainesville and its elected officials representing the people. It is for that reason that the Alachua County League of Cities, in a unanimous vote, and the Gainesville City Commission, in a unanimous vote, passed resolutions opposing this piece of resolution. Let's take a look at the reasons that have been put forward for abolishing Gainesville's police department or studying. One reason that has been put forward is that there are operational difficulties in the unincorporated urban fringe. Gainesville Police Department is not having these kinds of difficulties. If the Alachua County Sheriff's Office is having trouble ensuring public safety in the urban fringe of Gainesville, GPD can help them out. But it makes no sense whatsoever to eliminate the agency that is functioning well. There's also been the argument put forth, which is unsubstantiated, that the cost of service delivery will be less. But there's been no savings demonstrated by eliminating Gainesville's police department. Any comparisons with other municipalities are comparing apples to oranges. In fact, the process outlined in the bill before you will be costly in terms of staff resources, and the people of Gainesville will be forced to mount an expensive campaign to preserve this fundamental element of our city. Let's take a look at the real impacts of this proposed legislation in the context of why we have municipalities to begin with. For one, there is the economy of density. In a more dense urban population, you can have shorter response times because the distance from the patrol car to the site of the call is shorter. And this is true whether you have a density in Gainesville or Micanopy or High Springs. If you take away this economy of density, you will have people of Gainesville subsidizing shorter response times for those in the rural areas. I went on a bus tour with the Black on Black Crime Task Force in the Southwest 20th Avenue area, which was just recently annexed. And the apartment owners there and managers reported that their response times were greatly reduced and the service levels greatly enhanced upon annexation. Why should the people of Gainesville give this up? The University of Florida and Santa Fe College are mentioned in this to be a part of this committee. Do they really want to be dragged into this? This is something, again, that should be up to the city people of the city of Gainesville as outlined by our charter. But right now, there is only one municipality's police department that is targeted for elimination, and that is Gainesville. But those representatives of our fellow municipalities know that they could be next for elimination. With respect to the character of Gainesville, currently we can operate the Gainesville Police Department in a manner that's consistent with our community's character, in a manner that's responsive to our people through local representative democracy. The Gainesville Police Department has built up through decades human resources, and we have put in place community-oriented policing tailored to an urban environment. Our police department has a great number of physical assets that our people have invested in over many, many years. Should Gainesville Police Department be abolished, these assets would be confiscated without compensation to the people of Gainesville. Currently, the funding for Gainesville Police Department is determined in a dignified and orderly process. On the other hand, the process for deciding funding for the Alachua County Sheriff's Office is done differently. Good, honorable people enter into the budget process for ASO, but through no fault of them, but due to the structure of the process, the result is nothing short of a spectacle. Why would the people of Gainesville ever want to be part of a system such as this, and why would our representatives ask them to? This is not just a study. This particular piece of legislation mandates a predetermined result. It mandates a plan for the elimination and abolition of the Gainesville Police Department and a referendum regardless of information presented to the committee. This is nothing short of a mandated advocacy group. There is again a mechanism for the city of Gainesville and its people to determine how law enforcement will be carried out. We have a public safety committee of the Gainesville City Commission. Should this bill pass, there will be a campaign, but where will our community be better for it? The people of Gainesville should not be forced to raise their hard-earned dollars to wage a campaign against an external threat to take away the most fundamental function of your government. Having GPD provides representation more direct as to providing public safety within our borders. This is a time we need representation in our legislature more than ever. I ask you to end this attack on our citizens and put a stop to this legislation today. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Next, we'll have the City Commissioner Thomas Hawkins.
Thank you, Representative Chestnut, for having us. I want to thank all five of you for coming here to Gainesville. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation here in Gainesville instead of being up in Tallahassee. I'm sure some of the residents who will be here this morning appreciate that as well. I had 5 points that I wanted to cover, and I promise I'll try to be brief. And I think I want to respond a little bit, Representative Perry, to some of your line of questioning has been, what specifically can we do in this legislation to make it more palatable, to not make it really such a concern for Gainesville residents? And I think those 5 things that I have to mention kind of get to that point. The first one is that the charge that the legislature gives to this committee is going to determine the outcome. We all know that the question we ask dictates the scope of our answer. So the first thing that needs to be done is really asking the question, what is the best way to provide law enforcement services in Alachua County? Not to start with the question, how do we get rid of the Gainesville Police Department and get its resources to the county, but instead, what's the best way? And I'll give an example of what that kind of question might entail, but the current proposal doesn't, is we have 7 law enforcement agencies in the county. We were looking at efficiency of service provision. The scope of the question would include all those agencies, not simply the city of Gainesville. So that's one. But the second is, any countywide law enforcement agency needs to have a countywide funding source, and it's probably going to be something different than the millage that's currently paid to Alachua County. An untenable outcome from this process would be a result that required the Gainesville City Commission to lose its fiduciary responsibility to our voters and have to write a blank check to the county commission, to the sheriff's office every year. That responsibility that we have over a transfer from GRU, over the millage rate that we collect locally, over revenue from fees that are collected locally, is something that is extremely important to the residents of Gainesville because they direct us, they elect us directly. And if we lost control over that funding and had to write a blank check, that's not a tenable situation. So a countywide funding source needs to be found, and that needs to specifically be part of this committee's charge. Thirdly, Gainesville citizens very much value the community-oriented policing performed by the Gainesville Police Department. We have a police chief that holds office hours in East Gainesville outside of a law enforcement agency on a regular basis. We have very close involvement with neighborhood crime watches and associations. We support programs like the Riker House, and how that would be able to continue under a different kind of agency structure is something that this committee needs to specifically be charged with the legislature so that we have those answers at the beginning of the process. In other words, in order to be a study commission, it really needs to be charged with studying these kinds of questions. Fourthly, is compensation for city's assets. The taxpayers in the city of Gainesville have invested a tremendous amount in our police department. All of the city's assets, again, this comes back to the commission's fiduciary duty, cannot be transferred from the city of Gainesville without a very closely scrutinized process. And I'll give an example of that. When the city of Gainesville transfers assets to our community redevelopment agency, even that has to be done with just compensation based on the value of the asset. And you can't simply give those assets, including the police department, the police station, to another governmental entity without compensation. And finally, I would urge you, I know the state government, the state's budget is extremely tight, to find a funding source for the work of this committee. The kind of work that you're proposing it doing and studying is not cheap. It requires legal expertise, it requires professional expertise, it requires an area that's going to meet, may even require travel expenses. Do not create a committee without funding its work, or you're going to get what you pay for.
Next, City Commissioner Sherwin Henry.
To Representative Chestnut, Chair, and Senator Vice Chair, Representatives, thank you for this opportunity to address you today. As I stand before you this morning, there are a few points I would like to discuss with you concerning the path you, our legislative delegation, are taking in deciding to sanction a commission to undertake developing a proposed unification plan for local law enforcement services between the city of Gainesville and Alachua County. The first point I would like to discuss is process. I find it surprising that the local governing body elected by the citizens of this fine city wasn't informed beforehand that legislation as important as this was being considered. Secondly, as you have proposed developing a commission to study this issue, it seems this proposed commission is heavily stacked in the county's favor. And let me clarify. As I noticed, the county's constitutional officers have been given the choice to appoint a citizen to the commission. The city's chartered officers, the city manager, city attorney, the city clerk, the city auditor, and the equal opportunity charter officer have not been given that same opportunity. In proposing the information of this commission, the formation of this commission, there are several questions that need to be answered. How will this commission be funded? How much of the city of Gainesville staff's resources would have to be utilized to assist this commission? How will the significant amount of financial resources and assets currently invested in the Gainesville Police Department by the city's taxpayers be credited to fair value? Pursuing the formulation of this bill would be a significant drain on the city of Gainesville's resources and a distraction from the city's core missions. The decision to explore consolidation should be left to the Gainesville-Alachua County mechanism available in the Florida Constitution for local governments to transfer powers. What is being proposed is not a study. How can this be a study when the commission is being directed to develop a unification services plan for the city of Gainesville Police Department and the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, with the end result of this study to produce a referendum to abolish the Gainesville Police Department to transfer all properties of the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. And this goes to your question, Representative Perry, about language. Abolish is very inflammatory, and that's why people are upset, because it seems to give a preconceived direction to this commission. After the commission gathers all the facts, the findings could possibly show there would be no significant savings in the unification services. It should be noted that even the fraternal order of police do not support this initiative. There have been a number of comments made that the Gainesville City Commission does not support the establishment of a commission to study this issue because we're afraid to let the citizens decide. That is far from the truth. The city of Gainesville, all right. The Gainesville City Commission has a very astute and involved electorate. In closing, let me just say, with all the other municipalities that make up Alachua County, why is Gainesville the only municipality being asked or being considered to consolidate its law enforcement services? Why are the city of Waldo, the city of High Springs, the city of Alachua, and the University of Florida Police Department not being asked to be a part of this initiative? When problems have arisen in times past, GPP and ASO come together in interlocal agreements to solve the problem. And I thank you for allowing me to address you today. Thank you.
Next, we'll start the citizen comment section.
I come on behalf of many taxpayers that are concerned about fiscal responsibility, and many taxpayer dollars will be spent on a commission of this magnitude, as we well know, to sort of staff support, etc.
Past studies across the country have come up with very varied results. There's no clear picture that consolidation is a cost saver, and there are lots of indications that it is not a cost saver, it costs more money. The experience across the country backs that up as well.
What I'm really concerned about is this issue of home rule authority, and that this is an approach, as sort of a top-down approach, when I think something about policing as core services that should be bottom-up.
State, I'm sort of, I like the idea of the study. I think it's something that probably needs to be done to see if we can do that or not. I think that that's important. I can go back as my days as a city commissioner when we wanted to study the merger of fire services and all of that stuff. Going back to those days, and in terms of having the commission, the city commission and the county commission vote on those particular issues, we voted to move forward. The dynamics changed of the commission, and then folks were against it. So we never did get the opportunity to finish the study to see if it was feasible to do. So now, reading the bill, there are a lot of questions I had, and I think that was suggested here today too. I agree with Representative Porter by asking the question to folks, do they want a study or unification? I think that that's the proper way to move forward. But there are a lot of issues that I had. When you talk about the majority, are we talking about a supermajority of the electorate? There are a lot of issues that has to be worked out. I think that we've also heard today, why is the city of Waldo not included, High Springs, Alachua, UPD. We've heard a lot of things. Then we heard the most important thing is the cost. Can we afford this at this time to have this study or whatever? So there are a lot of things been said, and a lot of things in terms of the time. I think the timing is another issue here. When we look at issues of pension, salaries, all of those things in this particular study, as I stated earlier, to move forward with this, the legislative session starts next year in January because of reapportionment. And we are not through with session until May. So I don't know if it would be due diligence for a commission to actually have enough time to study the issues for us to consider, also as a legislative delegation, to move forward. So I have no problem, Senator Ulrich, Senator Bembry, of withdrawing this piece of legislation, and I would suggest that we come to some conclusion later of a question to the citizens. I think that will resolve this issue. If we ask the citizens of Alachua County and the city of Gainesville, would they like the study of unification of law enforcement for the county. So that's where I stand, and so if there's a motion to withdraw, and there's a second, I'll do so. Is there any other more comments on the motion that's on the floor? There aren't any. Those in favor of withdrawing the withdrawing the particular bill in terms of unification of law enforcement, in terms of me withdrawing it, please vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. And thank you all for coming and participating. Thank you.